Another explainer. Today, we are unpacking a massive, frankly pretty complex wave of news that is currently sweeping across Europe. From major political earthquakes and wild technological battlegrounds, all the way to some truly remarkable feats of human endurance, the continent is in an absolute state of flux right now. If you've been trying to keep up with the headlines today and you're feeling just a little bit overwhelmed, well, don't worry. Our goal right now is to synthesize all of these seemingly disconnected updates into one clear, cohesive picture for you.
But before we really get into the thick of it, a quick favor. To encourage us to bring more such content, please subscribe to the Paisa Files channel. We absolutely love creating these structured explainers for you, and your support is literally what fuels our ability to dive deep into these sources and make sense of all the noise. All right, let's get into it.
So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We've grouped the day's major events into 4 distinct areas. We're going to start with tech, truth, and war, then move into political shifts and unrest. After that, we'll look at health hazards and climate, and finally, we'll wrap up on a higher note with culture and human resilience. Let's kick things off with Section 1, Tech, Truth, and War.
Okay, let's dive into this first one, because the contrast here is honestly staggering. It's like a giant puzzle of modern warfare. On one side, we have a terrifying example of digital conflict. A BBC Verify investigation, led by Olga Robinson, uncovered this massive Russian-linked disinformation campaign. And what they did is wild. They used artificial intelligence to clone the voice of an actual emergency medical advisor, a 999 call handler from Preston, England. This faked audio was then dropped into a video campaign specifically designed to spread fear right ahead of Poland's presidential election. It's a really stark reminder of how our digital identities are being weaponized globally. But then, you look at the physical front lines in Ukraine, and technology is being used to literally preserve life. The Ukrainian army used a drone to spot an elderly woman trying to flee her war-torn village. They then sent in a ground robot to navigate the danger zone and successfully rescue her. So you have the exact same era of advanced tech being utilized in 2 completely opposite, deeply impactful ways.
So we're seeing all these intense clashes in the technological space and on the military front lines. But how is this underlying friction mirroring the actual unrest we are seeing spill onto civilian streets right now?
Which brings us to Section 2, Political Shifts and Unrest.
What's really striking here is just the sheer geographical spread of this unrest. We are seeing tense, highly charged crowds everywhere, and we're just going to look at the facts of what's happening. Starting in France, Swiss police ended up deploying water cannons and tear gas to disperse anti-G7 protesters after some pretty intense clashes. Meanwhile, over in Paris, what should have been just a sporting event turned chaotic. Nearly 800 people were arrested after clashing with police following the PSG Champions League final. Moving over to Ireland, hundreds of people gathered right in Dublin city centre, protesting and demanding answers after the tragic death of Youth Sakila. And on a policy level, responding to all these ongoing crises, reporters visiting a migrant camp in northern France detailed a newly proposed 3-year deal with Paris, and that deal is aimed squarely at stopping migrants from crossing the channel on small boats.
But perhaps the biggest political earthquake of the day actually comes down to this number, 16. That is the exact number of years that Viktor Orban served in power in Hungary, and today, that era came to an abrupt end. Pro-EU leader Peter Magyar and his TISA party won a massive, historic landslide victory. Correspondents broadcasting from outside Hungary's parliament were describing it as a truly monumental moment as crowds gathered to hear the former prime minister's concession. It is a massive shift in Eastern European leadership, for sure.
Let's see how this builds into our next theme. Because as the political landscape shifts violently, the physical landscape is also testing Europe's limits. What natural and environmental hazards are hitting the continent right now?
That leads us into Section 3, Health, Hazards, and Climate.
Okay, civil infrastructure is under acute stress today. First up, a massive climate heat dome has just settled right over Western Europe. Reports coming out of Paris describe the city as punishingly hot, with temperatures soaring way above the average for May. Second, we've got a major public health scare unfolding in the Canary Islands. The MV Hondius cruise ship, which was unfortunately hit by the hantavirus, is currently disembarking passengers in Tenerife. And locals there are understandably worried, publicly calling the ship's arrival reckless due to the severe health risks. Third, up in Ireland, we saw an incredible emergency response. Almost 60 firefighters had to battle this massive warehouse blaze that completely tore through Cherrymore Kitchens and Bedrooms, which is a family-run business in Donegal town. And finally, in Malta, emergency crews rushed to the scene of a fireworks factory explosion. Thankfully, the 2 men injured were taken to the hospital with only minor injuries,
but overall, it's just a barrage of acute physical crises.
And speaking of hazards, today also marks a pretty somber milestone. 40. It has been exactly 40 years since the world's worst nuclear accident in 1986. Journalists actually went back and revisited Pripyat today. That's the haunting ghost city that was completely abandoned following the explosion at the nearby Chernobyl nuclear power plant. And looking at those visuals, it serves as a really stark, silent reminder of the devastating, long-term consequences of environmental and industrial disasters.
Now, it can definitely feel a bit heavy when you look at all these political clashes and environmental hazards. But amidst all of this tension, where are we seeing those moments of human triumph? Where's the cultural celebration?
Let's wrap things up with Section 4, Culture and Human Resilience.
I absolutely love this story. Look at this number, 33. That represents the 33 consecutive marathons run in 33 days by the FTD brothers, Jordan and Cian Adams. I mean, just think about the physical toll of that. They literally just finished this grueling Irish marathon challenge at Merrion Square in Dublin city centre. And when someone asked Jordan how he felt after crossing the finish line of his 33rd marathon, he simply noted that it was definitely time for a lie-in. Just an unbelievable display of stamina and determination from those two.
And then we have this quote, which so brilliantly captures the enduring beauty of European architecture: stones, colors, and light. Those were the exact words used by Pope Leo XIV during his visit to Spain to describe Barcelona's iconic Sagrada Familia. As that masterpiece was beautifully illuminated by fireworks to mark his visit, it provided this incredible moment of absolute awe and reflection, right in the middle of a very busy news cycle.
Let's run through a few more cultural victories that lit up the continent today, because they are just fantastic. In music, 27-year-old Dara arrived home to screaming fans after her tune Bangaranga won Bulgaria its first ever Eurovision title. Over on the royal front, the Princess of Wales received a wonderfully enthusiastic welcome from crowds in Italy, which is a big deal as it marks her return to overseas visits following her cancer treatment. In the art world, we had a genuinely hilarious moment. The winner of a €1 million Picasso charity draw actually thought the phone call from BBC Radio 4's Front Row was a scam. They literally didn't believe it before finally realizing they'd actually won a masterpiece. And back in Paris, Parisian artist JR, who you might know as the French Banksy, inflated this monumental giant cave structure right on a city bridge, and the time-lapse footage of it is just incredible. The creativity and resilience of people are honestly everywhere you look.
So what do we actually take away from all of this? Well, today's explainer truly highlights a continent of deep, deep contrasts. We've got a Europe where cutting-edge AI is being used to manipulate elections, while simultaneously robotics are saving lives on the front lines. We see centuries-old architecture illuminated by a papal visit sitting right alongside massive street protests and historic electoral shifts that end decades of political rule. It is a complex, incredibly dynamic place right now.
And that brings us to the end of our synthesis. From the terrifying reality of AI voice clones to the massive historic elections reshaping governments, Europe is changing fast. So I want to leave you with this question. Which of these shifts do you think will ultimately impact you the most? Think about it and keep exploring. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.